theories now. TLDR.
This theory suggests that this whole Bikini Bottom thing might have been taken from Bikini Atoll, which is a coral reef in the Marshall Islands. So basically this is a huge area consisting of about 23 islands, and 23 is also the number of nuclear tests that were done here by the US between 1946 to 1958. The inhabitants were relocated and the area remains inhabitable to this day. So the theory comes in that maybe the world of Bikini Bottom is inhabited by the creatures who were mutated by the nuclear testing. Yes and no. Yes, Bikini Bottom is in fact named after Bikini Atoll, and no, for the nuclear theory, they didn't go that far.
3,000 years later.
SpongeHenge is an episode in the 5th season which is infamous not because of some overboard way to make humor, much the opposite. This episode is in fact not even considered funny, but disturbing in many ways. If you haven't watched it and you don't want any spoilers, then you may skip to the next entry now. In this episode, SpongeBob builds a SpongeHenge, which is a reference to Stonehenge, so that it can get himself rid of the jellyfishes that are after him for the sound that SpongeBob's holes would make due to the strong winds that for some reason blow throughout the episode. But all SpongeBob cares about is to have the jellyfishes fooled, who literally took his job, his best friend, and in a way his life away from him, all because of this sound that they are attracted to. SpongeBob is eventually able to do just that and finally leave the cave where he'd been making the SpongeHenge and be back to Bikini Bottom, just to find that it is gone. And the way humans are still examining Stonehenge, in the end aliens are shown to be examining SpongeHenge after 3,000 years. So you see a lot of dark and unsettling things in there. There are literally articles and dedicated videos made on this episode discussing not just the reason of the wind, but the reason of this episode too. And if this is the ending that the show had planned to leave us with, but then later for some reason they went on. Who knows? But I do wonder which one is more mysterious now. Krabby Patty ingredients. Now the world knows that nobody knows the main ingredient which makes Krabby Patty Krabby Patty. That is what Mr. Krabs have been hiding away from Plankton. And of course when there's something like that in the show, there would be theories, and there would be dark theories. The darkest one probably being that cheeseburgers have cheese, chicken burgers have chicken in them, veggie burgers have all kinds of veggies. So Krabby Patty, what, crabs? But wait, Mr. Krabs is a crab. Imagine a restaurant where humans sell human burgers with real human flesh in them, but that's not the most famous theory about it now anyway. Let's walk through the one which is. Remember in Tier 3 we discussed the Alex Bale video in which he tackles multiple Bikini Bottom mysteries. I remember carefully scripting that part to not give away too much because I knew this entry is on the way and then things just would have sounded repetitive right now had I said it all back then. So in the end of that Alex Bale video, one of those mysteries that he discusses is actually the unknown Krabby Patty ingredient. Remember the whale that Mr. Krabs killed, which he proves that was with a few supportive points like the easy access that Mr. Krabs has to all the Krabby Patty ingredients and that how common it is in Bikini Bottom to buy and sell actual seafood. He tries to prove how the secret ingredient in the Krabby Patty is actually that whale's carcass. Yeah, so the whale that is Pearl's mother. In other words, if that's true, Bikini Bottom citizens bite onto Pearl's mom's dead meat every time they hog onto a Krabby Patty. Even Pearl herself. So now you might say, if that is true, one day when Mr. Krabs would run out of the, there will be no more Krabby Patty, right? Well, as a big finish, in the very end, Alex also adds that Mr. Krabs, being the miser kind that he is, of course didn't just adopt Pearl after killing her mother only out of kindness. Because one day, sooner or later, when he's sure he's going to need the whale meat that's been making Krabby Patty, then, although some might say that it's a bit of a stretch because the producers of the show had already stated that it's vegan patty. But Alex Bale goes on to debunk even their claim as well. And come on man, it's Alex Bale we're talking about. Show's producer. What do they know? And despite, do we have anything else to hold on to? Like, what do you guys think is the secret ingredient? I know what I thought for the longest time. I thought Krabby Patty has Krabby. Yeah, that Pokemon. That's how clueless we are with this. Plankton's curiosity indeed is totally understandable.
She doesn't like to talk about it.
This is not directly said, but most certainly indirectly indicated, just like many other mysteries in the show. And although Alex Bale may not agree,
Her husband is still alive.
let's see what it is about at least. In the season 2 episode Trusty Love, the first episode where Mr. Krabs falls in love with something besides money, that something, or rather someone, is Mrs. Puff. When Mr. Krabs hears the name of Mrs. Puff for the first time, no, he doesn't go all Mandark's love theme for Dee Dee over her. He rather gets sad to hear the title Mrs.
Mrs. Puff? Oh, she's married.
Understandable. However, SpongeBob quickly relieves Mr. Krabs by saying that she is single,
Oh no, Mr. Krabs, she's single.
which sounds great, and SpongeBob certainly looks happy to let Mr. Krabs know that. Obviously confused, Mr. Krabs then wonders what's Mrs. all about in that case.
Then what happened to Mr. Puff?
Who is her husband? Where is he? Is he rich? To which SpongeBob responds,
She doesn't like to talk about it.
she doesn't like to talk about it. After which we get to see this. Now there are many such random things in the show, and what's crazy to me is that how characters say these spontaneous things out of the blue and the other character immediately understands it like, yeah, it's very obvious. Well, clearly not so, because we humans don't know what this should exactly mean. But it's theorized that this out of the context scene is shown as a nice way to say that her husband is no more. Okay, well, something that brings the context into this is the thought that perhaps
Mr. Puff.
was killed and made into a light bulb. Therefore, also notice something. Mr. Krabs asks
What happened to Mr. Puff?
what happened to Mr. Puff. He could have been made to ask anything else, like where is Mr. Puff or who is Mr. Puff, so on and so forth. But he particularly asks,
What happened to Mr. Puff?
followed by, should that mean that this is what's happened to Mr. Puff? Makes sense? Yeah? No? I guess? Anyways, this can also be linked to the SpongeBob movie where how a fish was made into a light bulb. Firstly, meaning that it is possible that Mrs. Puff's husband would have met the same fate, as apparently it seems as it is a thing for fishes to be turned into light bulbs in Bikini Bottom. And also meaning that maybe that was Mr. Puff himself. You might have watched me talking about various Pokemon fan theories on this channel, because there are a bunch of weird ones. One eerie one which I haven't talked about in here yet on a long video but mentioned in a short one I guess, is that all of the show is in Ash's own thoughts. Nothing is really taking place, relating that to no one ever aging, Ash forgetting things about his past, so on and so forth. It's not a Pokemon video, I know, but that was a convenient example there in order to explain how sometimes a fan theory happens to be solving a lot many issues with the series in question. So somebody applied that same in-the-head logic to SpongeBob as well, with clever reasoning. You see, in the season 5 episode SpongeHenge that we talked about in the first year itself, we found out how in the end the Bikini Bottom is no more when SpongeBob eventually manages to return to it, somehow saving itself from the jellyfishes. As per which there can't be more of SpongeBob adventures in Bikini Bottom. Yeah, there shouldn't be more episodes then. That should be the end. The show should not just continue as nothing happened, unless the show is showing some flashback or something that's just happening in the dream, because that's what this theory is saying. The show actually did end as it was apparently planned to be, like we discussed, and everything that happened and is still happening after that is just in the thoughts of SpongeBob. SpongeBob is simply dreaming of the good times and imagining the sweet life sitting somewhere in his wasted and forsaken undertown that once saw the sponges, shenanigans and laughter day in and night out.
Feeling that, feeling it, 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 feeling it.
Whatever we've been seeing after SpongeHenge episode, it's all in SpongeBob's head. And we are in SpongeBob's head watching all that's inside SpongeBob's head. Is that why it's been a little spongy in here? So it must be all thoughts now. That's quite depressing. Don't worry, it's just another theory. Even if it's not a forced one and has sprouted out of an actual episode where the makers themselves showed us how Bikini Bottom is all gone, it is still possible that the producers of the show can come back one day and say that this in the head theory is just. But until then, and just in case it is not, we must agree that SpongeBob is still quite optimistic, imagining all these fun thoughts in a dark and dun place that once was a happy and happening Bikini Bottom.
We'll get you a date.
This is a theory which, as the name suggests that Mr. Krabs, the owner of Krabby Patty, is also the sugar daddy of Pearl. And just like many theories, I understand this may sound too dumb to at first, but moving on just for the sake of it, let's see what it is after all about. Because hey, it's SpongeBob SquarePants, the show in which we got to see this. So could this as well really be? Is it possible? I mean, since anything is, this must be too. And there are points that support and oppose this thing presented by people who are in favor and against this theory, respectively. Let us go over the main points that make them think the way they think. Mr. Krabs indeed has plenty of cash to spare to be able to be Pearl's sugar daddy. Mr. Krabs also has plenty of penny pinching that would keep him from dispensing that spare cash like that. Pearl calls Mr. Krabs daddy, which might mean sugar daddy and not daddy daddy. It indeed is just daddy daddy, and we're just in mood to make things up. Pearl sure likes to spend a lot of money and keep asking for it from Mr. Krabs. Well, Pearl just likes to shop like all teenagers, and she simply asks for money from Mr. Krabs for him being his father. We don't see Mr. Krabs related to any other female other than the dates he's been to with Mrs. Puff, so he might be just that. But then why Mr. Krabs wanted someone to go along with Pearl to the prom? Mr. Krabs is old enough to be called a sugar daddy. Pearl is too young to have one. So yeah, what do you think?
I'll take you. This is gold in the form of chum.
Chum ingredients. Ingredients of chum. First of all, chum, by the way, is the main ingredient in almost every item that Plankton decides to keep in his restaurant called the Chum Bucket. Yeah, the restaurant really justifies the name there. Now one might wonder, what is the ingredient of this signature ingredient? Is it the same that it is in our real world, which fishermen use as a bait for fishes, which is just more fishes? Yeah, that seems to be the case with Plankton's chum as well, as we can kinda sorta see at times in the series. But for some reason, the chum that is a successful bait in our real life seems to attract no customer in Bikini Bottom. So that's questionable. But since their world has many a time proved to be working in a different way than ours, like in the last entry of the previous tier, then well, we shouldn't be surprised. And so if that chum, just like our chum, is made up of fishes, where does Plankton get it from? Ever since first appearing in the season 5 episode Friend or Foe, this has been a constant query from the fans. Although much like Krabby Patty, the main ingredient of chum is a mystery, the show has been kind enough to have the audience in on a few of the other ingredients. Like in the season 3 episode SpongeHenge, we get to know that it has
some jellyfish squeezings, whale blubber, seahorse snout, and a sprinkle of anchor rust.
And in the season 9 episode Jailbreak,
Cultured fungus growth, medium.
Basically an old sock.
Subtropical vegetal matter.
In other words, a banana peel.
Organic filler.
A bucket of trash.
Hey you, come here. Blow. Live bacterial culture.
A recently used napkin. I understand this might be getting unbearably pathetic. Let's quickly finish it off by mentioning that Plankton puts these ingredients in a prison toilet, shuts the lid, flushes it, in order to mix them all together. It wasn't until season 6 episode Krabby Chronicle when the authorities find out that the chum is made up of fish, which results in the Plankton's chum bucket getting shut out. This finally reveals how Plankton had been getting the Bikini Bottom citizens to engage into indirect cannibalism without their knowledge of it. But is that all there is to it? Or something more going on which we don't get to see, yet it's seeing us? As a matter of fact, going back to Friend or Foe, a pinch of chum was originally a part of the burger recipe that Plankton made as a kid along with Mr. Krabs when they were friends. That's in fact where things started falling apart between both of them, as that burger, which originally had chum in it, poisoned the old man Jenkins, resulting into Mr. Krabs and Plankton to accuse each other of the contamination that caused the poisoning, and that's how friends turn into foes. You see how it goes? Mr. Krabs presumably got rid of chum from his Krabby Patty recipe. Plankton, on the other hand, kept the chum and came up with... yeah. Well, going by how things are working out for them, maybe we know what caused the Krabby Patty prototype burger to be poisonous. Again raising the question on the contents of this thing called chum, making it about as intriguing of a mystery as the Krabby Patty. 5572220. If you go around telling your friends that the SpongeBob's episode with the production number 5572220 is a lost episode, it's possible that one of them would ask you to in fact get lost, because they might have seen the season 3 episode SpongeBob Meets the Strangler listed under the episode 5572220 on some fan-made SpongeBob page in fandom or something. But you can very well make your comeback then and there and ask them to check out the Wikipedia to see how SpongeBob and the Strangler is actually 5572221. If you manually search for the 220 code in the wiki, you do find an entry, and for a second it might feel as you've solved the mystery when you see the code assigned to the episode. But if you notice, you'll see 2 production codes assigned to 5572220 and 5572208, 2 codes for the same episode, when all of the other episodes seem to have just one allotted to them. A quick search for the code of in the fandom site would give you the latter assigned to it. Maybe because that episode had 2 parts and 1 code is assigned to each. Either way, it looks like 220 is a question that we don't know the answer to for sure. Did the team just skip the number for some reason? Is it a lost episode? Or oh, is it again that Red Mist episode? Or maybe one episode too gruesome to be televised to general audience? How can we say that? This is where the whole creepypasta thing comes into the picture. Because other than the fans who say that SpongeBob dies in this episode, an overwhelming consensus is that Nick hate the episode for it being too scary for kids, leading us to believe this post by an anonymous user. Let's read. Hello. I can't tell you my name because if I do, it could put me in more danger than I am currently. So you can just refer to me by the nickname Crazy Steve. I used to work at Nickelodeon as a storyboarder for the show SpongeBob. I have decided that the world needs to know about something. There is a cancelled episode of SpongeBob called SpongeBob's Revenge. All of the normal writers were out that day, so we had to get a replacement writer. I'll get to them later. For now, I'll just say that they were a troubled person. The episode starts with SpongeBob watching TV with Gary. Except in this episode, Gary is Mouse for no discernible reason. I guess the writer thought it would be funny. SpongeBob is watching TV and having a good time until the news comes on. The news is going over normal news stuff, like all of the disappearances and unusual murders in the area. SpongeBob then makes a joke about socialists in relation to the murders and disappearances. There is then a knock on the door. It's Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs then asks, SpongeBob, me boy, may you look at that wall and not turn back around. SpongeBob then hesitantly agrees and looks at the wall. Mr. Krabs then steals Gary and runs off. It then cuts to a few hours later card before cutting back to SpongeBob. SpongeBob then says, okay Mr. Krabs, can I turn around now? SpongeBob then turns around and asks, where's Mr. Krabs and Gary? He then finds a note by Mr. Krabs that says, ho 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 SpongeBob boy, I stole Gary and I will turn him into meat within the next 30 minutes. Ho ho ho, you're also terminated from your position at the Krusty Krab. Ho ho ho. SpongeBob's eyes then turn red and start to bleed blood. He then collapses to the floor and lets out an agonizing scream of pure pain and suffering. He then gets back up and smiles. He goes and gets an already bloody knife from the kitchen and says, it's time to rip and tear. It then cuts to a shot of SpongeBob skipping into Squidward's house. Inside the house, SpongeBob confronts Squidward. Squidward, despite SpongeBob's bloody eyes and bloody knife, then says in an annoyed voice like it is some sort of daily occurrence, SpongeBob, what are you doing here at this time of the day? SpongeBob responds, hey Squidward, are you going downward into the grave? Squidward then slams the door on SpongeBob. SpongeBob then cuts through the door and says, here's Sponge. It then cuts to an overhead shot of the house. You can hear Squidward's screams, and the scene ends. It then cuts to the next scene. SpongeBob is then in front of Patrick's house. He knocks on Patrick's rock and it opens up. Patrick is horrified at the sponge. He shouts, oh no, capitalism has stolen Sponge. I knew Mr. Krabs would corrupt you. Sponge then throws his knife and murders Patrick. He then laughs an evil laugh and says, now for Mr. Krab. It then cuts to Mr. Krabs cooking Gary in the Krusty Krab. He hears an explosion and runs outside. SpongeBob is approaching a giant space fortress. He's in some science fiction super armor and holding a super shotgun. Heavy metal is playing. Mr. Krabs then rubs his eyes. It turns out he was just hallucinating. He sighs a breath of relief and then turns around to go back inside, but the slippery little sponge is blocking the entrance. Mr. Krabs is scared, so he screams. SpongeBob laughs and shouts, this is your end, Mr. Krab. Your reign of tyranny over fast food industry is over. The crab then responds, I didn't do it to hurt you. I just wanted the money. SpongeBob then says, I am now more powerful than I have ever been. Even King Triton will fear me now. SpongeBob then runs up to breaks Mr. Krabs' neck. SpongeBob then uses his sponge powers to fly away. He flies over Bikini Bottom and releases his hand. Fire then flies out of his hand and then rains down on the city. He laughs as the city is wiped out of existence. The episode then ends there. This episode was of course very disturbing, so there was an investigation. After later investigation, it turns out the writer of this episode was a cultist and murderer who had a sick sense of humor. They escaped before we could send them to jail. The episode itself was fully finished because the producer said to just keep working on it. That was before they actually saw it. I wanted to let people know because wait, who's knocking the door? Not bad, and believable too if you somehow managed to avoid the last few words. Well, it could very well be the case, or if that was too depressing, then let me relieve you by saying that it is also possible that it is simply a production error and nothing else. Flowers, we all love them, but some are actually dangerous, no matter how colorful and pretty they may appear to be. Such a life lesson. I read a bit about one such apparently beautiful flower recently. No, not the one Venus lays beneath. I rather want to bring your attention to these things. Since many years, they've been amusing us all by just being there in the background of Bikini Bottom, making it feel like everything in the world is also alright. Well, I don't wish to take that feeling away from you, so kindly hold on to it. We can do it. Just a fan theory, okay?
Just a theory.
Even if it is true. I mean, you've sure by now heard many dark and crazy speculations about these 7 deadly sinners anyway. And well, these large colorful fidget spinners sure can be considered underwater characters of the show as well, why not? I mean, they have contributed to the episodes. Interacted with the characters, moved, stretched, distorted, whatnot, been outside of the Bikini Bottom, been to the sky. I mean, you can't really ignore them, especially when other than SpongeBob, they are the only ones that have been there in each and every episode. More than that actually, as they've spilled out and have been witnessed mystifying the background of other shows as well. But did they spill? Or are they? I'll explain. That if considered the show's characters, what is their sin? These freaking floating flowers that forever fail to find fans who'd figure out their funky fangles? So boys and girls, let's wonder what this is. Weird flower? Sunk bangle? Harmless fandangle? Or scandal? This is the part when we talk about the sponsors, if you had one. And geez, did I call it scandal? What even is fangle? We gotta stop rhyming in intros already. I stumbled upon Kaya Sakina on Twitter, now X, pointing out this remarkable correlation between these guys, the adorable flowers in SpongeBob SquarePants that have been blessing her life since childhood, and these folks that sure don't look anything as adorable as any flower in the world. Which is basically oil contaminating the ocean water over time, cause oil in water can eventually form such shapes and stay on the surface, being less dense than water, and while at it show off rainbow colors as well due to something I think is known as a thin film principle, which we'll talk more about in a bit. And so the hypothesis goes as opposed to indicating joy, what the so-called Bikini Bottom clouds have been really symbolizing all this time is basically pollution, as they are oil spills. Although to some people this comparison doesn't make any sense, and I just love some of these comments. But digging in just for the sake of the story, we're gonna look at one classic SpongeBob theory that supports this tweet quite firmly.
And the entire fleet waits in almost agonized tenseness. Now but 5 seconds to go, and...
For starters, it greatly helps to establish the real-life location of the town where these fluffy flower-shaped clouds mainly belong. That is Bikini Bottom. For which I'll have to skim through the celebrated SpongeBob theory, which actually helps us with a nice baseline here by making us wonder if there's really a Bikini Bottom in the real world. Well, probably, considering that the creators could have named this ocean bed wonderland literally anything, yet they decided to give it a name that is believably similar to an actual place on the earth. A place with a history that's unbelievably dark when compared to what we know Bikini Bottom as. In other words, Bikini Atoll. Once that was called never mind. Yes, that 6 km square coral reef in the Pacific Ocean, which endured a number of nuclear tests by the US government during the Cold War. So basically, this is a huge area consisting of about 23 islands, and 23 is also the number of nuclear tests that were done here by the US between 1946 to 1958. And yes, Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob himself, actually approves this theory. Kind of. What he did not approve though was a little extension of this hypothesis, which suggests that the Bikini Bottom citizens could actually be resultant genetic mutations of the underwater creatures, owing to the radiation that surrounds the entire area, due to which, by the way, it's inhabitable to this day. So that part hasn't really got Mr. Kenny's appreciation. And it's fine, because even if there is no relation between the aftermath of the bombings at the Bikini Isle and the SpongeBob characters, only the fact that Bikini Bottom is located at a nuclear weapon test site would do, for now. After all, the person who kind of approved it is literally the closest you can get to SpongeBob himself.
Step 1. Make a noise like a smoke detector low on batteries.
Although we're not yet sure what he or anybody else from the SpongeBob crew would say about this comparison that we're going about, but since at least these whereabouts are confirmed, this oil stain thesis just might hold some merit. As Bikini Atoll Marshall Islands had a lot of radioactive material dumped into the ocean, and it's obviously bad for not only marine environment but the water bodies as well, as they can interact with the sea, which, as documented, causes the formation of such oil pollution flowers, if you want to call them that. Because you see, the mechanism of such detonating devices spills oil when in liquid, causing oil spills. And over the years, these oil expels floating on the surface of the water keep spreading out, eventually forming a thin layer called as an oil slick. Oil continues spreading, going around and drifting apart, becoming thinner and spreads out a little more, meeting others like them and getting together, now even thinner, finally turning into quite a slim skin that's referred to as a sheen, taking eventually such shapes and ending up colorized thanks to some science and sunlight. Swivel, swirl, spin, whirl, twirl, tween, pink, blue, green, which may be pretty to look at. I mean, of course, how can something resembling a rainbow ever be bad, right? Yeah, maybe not a good idea. They are catastrophic in more ways than one, as they can destroy the insulation capability of fur-bearing mammals, water-repelling abilities of birds' feathers with their poisonous chemical constituents, be toxic to surface-dwelling animals, wildlife and their habitat, expose our aquatic friends to harsh elements, affect natural waterproofing and water buoyancy, adulterate food supplies causing malnourishment, even impact the sediment when oil at times sink down through the deep, probably upon becoming heavier after mixing with the sand and stuff at the shore and depositing at the ocean floor. So yeah, and there's more, because they do hurt, but not only by being fatal to sea creatures due to oil contamination and by directly polluting these moanas of our planet, but also by being disappointing to the fans of an iconic cartoon series and indirectly spoiling childhoods, which by now you're probably convinced of. And it would be sad to know that these guys have been the effect of oil dumping all this time. Yeah, I mean, these are what for us clouds were in the show's underwater sky. Well, never thought I would say those two words in the same sentence. Vibrant colors, puffy shapes, making us think of nothing else but to just take a whole bunch of unapproved leaves for a summer vacation on some island getaway. Although now it all makes us want to think, why did we even wonder what they are in the first place? But oh well, now that we have, let's take a moment to also wonder what these things were to the one who actually drew them.
Good morning, flowers.
The background designer of the show, Kenny Pittenger, mentioned once that the flowers are actually there to give it some feel, which sounds like something that at least means never to remind us of the horrors that are completely unrelated to it. But whatever he drew, it has now drawn the community to these harmful oil patches in the ocean. And the community is also looking forward to the reason this one gets from the creators once it catches someone's attention who worked on the show. In case it does. Well, I hope it does, and I hope it's unrelated. I guess even Kaya Sakina would want to be wrong about her own theory. And maybe have hope, cause Mr. Pittenger went on adding that they function as clouds in a way, but since the show takes place underwater, they aren't really clouds. So really, these sky flowers are mostly a whimsical design element that Steve came up with to evoke the look of a flower print Hawaiian shirt or something like that. So clearly he knows that they can't be clouds because they're underwater, rather the Bikini Bottom's version of clouds. But I doubt it sounds like he's that particular about it. As you know, it's quite common of a thing in the creative experiences, not letting reasoning form barriers in the mental adventures. He did it, they liked it, and it was kept, rather than trying to put a label over everything. Sometimes some things can just be, to be or not to be seen. And anyway, it's just a cartoon, remember? Remember, it's a cartoon. Let's just talk about cartoons and animation and movements for a while and how it all started. Okay, not that far back. That's planned for a future reconvene of ours anyway. I want you to think about this time rather. Yeah, the golden age as they call it. Like the first attempts at flight and swipes, they were humble. That time when you've barely even scratched the surface on a mission of finding a needle in a haystack, sky is the limit. And like with airplanes and mobile phones where it wasn't always this simple, in the world of cartoons too, it used to never be that straightforward to represent an object. The directors, storyboarders, animators, in-betweeners must have had conversations at times like, goodness, how are we gonna animate that in the movie? They had to get creative to convey certain elements, as not everything could be hand-drawn frame by frame. There were limitations, and we could see it being the most ordinary things around us, say a puddle of water or something. So yeah, they're like, hey, we gotta get around it. And one of the ways they used to get around it is by not trying to get around it, using the most obvious approach trying to get around it. If a little hack can help the story to proceed, why not? Almost like using scotch tape to fix a leg of a show that's going to break a leg at the stage anyway. You never know, the scotch tape might even be considered attractive. A style statement, be a thing of its own. Cause it did. You must have seen animations and GIFs like these where the outline is always wobbly. Yeah, almost like the lines are boiling, right? That's cause it's the line boil animation, where a constant movement in the form of the figure is made to mimic the imperfections of freehand improvisations and emphasize motion, making it all look quite dynamic. Best for 2D animations with otherwise less action going around in the scene. Well, side note, it's likely to make students think of the onion skin feature from the retired Adobe Flash, which could be used for such an effect. But the origin of it all dates back to much simpler times. It's said that Abai Works was the one who came up with this line boil way of animation. He probably didn't call it that, he probably didn't call it anything. But it's a great innovation that came from a lost hero. Why lost? Well, Steamboat Willie, famous for the first time a Mickey Mouse short was distributed. Mr. Iwerks, on the other hand though, sadly not as much. Yet the challenges were real, of which naming stuff sure must have been least of their worries. And it is around that time when another hero of ours, Eric Cleon Larson from Disney's Creative Core Animators Group, 9 Old Men, developed a method of hand-drawn animation known as the Squiggle technique. Yep, the birth of Squiggle vision, one may call it. In which, in a nutshell, the focus is on capturing the energy and life in the drawing by focusing on the essence of what's been drawn, rather than getting into the precision of details. So the soul of the object could be conveyed, even if the depiction isn't perfect and realistic. Well, take note of the last one, because although Mr. Larson was mainly inspired by the real-life maneuvers in coming up with this procedure in order to suggest fluid motion and configuration by using loose gestural drawing strokes, one of the results Squiggle achieved along that all was the basic idea of the subject, enough to just help the audience with the right thought, from where they could take it up, let go of the gaps and just understand. Understand. There is understanding. There's always an understanding between the designer and the consumer in such cases. A mutual understanding to accept that these are curls, this is a mouth, and this is, well, you get the idea, of things that in this age of internet sometimes might be referred to as being out of context.
Discord is not a good thing.
Yet in this case, just acceptable enough. Like one may accept these as flowers for their shapes, or clouds for where they're situated, even if that's not where they're suited. As is theorized that Mr. Hillenburg decided these flowers or clouds to act as a little callback to the roots of the art and pay homage to the classics and their ways. All these systems invented by the greats. So the clouds could be that nod to the cartoon history whilst containing just the right aesthetics required to be in SpongeBob. Yeah, maybe just cause they're colorful doesn't mean it's all oil. Hey wait, and how is oil colorful anyway? Just like the remnants of radioactivity forming these swirly colorful rainbows on the water surface, you might have noticed that similar kind of iridescent effect is seen quite a lot actually in the environment. In peacock's feathers, opals, holographic material, butterfly wings, opals, and well, soap bubbles. Because this fine little touch of rainbow in the nature is possible due to the thin film interference. Here, film is the usual film, by definition, which is a thin transparent material or substance or thing, and thin is, well, thin. Lastly, interference here is the interference between the wavelengths of two light rays caused by the interaction of the properties of light's wave nature with the properties of the said film. So how does this thin thing causes this thin thing interference making colors to show up? Well, I don't know all that much about science, so I'm gonna take the assistance of Yeah, hey, we really gotta rush through this section. Most of the viewers are gonna skip past it anyway. Can we please get to the explanation? I mean, everybody knows you already. I'll add your introduction in the post.
Okay.
Or maybe not. Thanks. So, let's begin with establishing the meaning of light and colors and the relation between both. Light as we see it, in other words, visible light, if zoomed into, will reveal how it's made up of waves, having properties like wavelength, frequency, and speed. And out of all the possible wavelengths, the ones visible to us humans fall in the frequency ranging from 400-ish to 700-ish nanometers. A range between which the visible light falls. Outside of this, for us, is so out of sight, though may pass through the blinds, but oh so out of mind. Wavelength is the mechanism, but not magic. Magic is the transformation of the attributes of these optical light wavelengths into colors that happen inside of our heads, because these mighty little waves have encoded properties that could be decoded into the magnificence we see around us. Thanks to the tools that we happen to have, eyes that are evolved to become the right apparatus to detect the color of wavelength that's coming to meet the corn cells, brain, the equipment to help us be fooled by the signals it receives for the colors despite having just 3 kinds of color capturing cells, due to which we are able to swear to God that it's a yellow banana, regardless of definitely having no application to grab the color in question, but certainly having the choreography in place to make it appear as the mind is the jack of all trades, master of at least one, in reality which is just an ace of the wig, prefect to some, sure an instrument to decrypt the beauty out of chaos, but a professor of none. So yes, that's it. Light is waves. Waves have various wavelengths, and each wavelength looks like a certain color. And although the mixture of all these wavelengths and colors is white light, we see a lot more than just white around us, you might have noticed by now. That is because of the things around us absorbing certain wavelengths and reflecting the others. The wavelength that gets reflected is the one that gets to us, and so we see that object as that wavelength or color. In other words, the colors of the objects around us are the colors that those objects in fact rejected. Our internal color interpretation system embraces that rejection to the point of symbolizing that article at issue by the color it refused. Amazing, I know, right? Roses are red, violets are blue, and it's wild whilst they reach our eyes, meet at a site to go from the photoreceptor cells in the retina to the optic nerve as electrical impulses on this short drive to the mind, making us witness this attribute of the light through articles and sites around us that choose to absorb and reflect different wavelengths, basically deciding what part of the white light is going on the ride, rather than just plain black or white. Although sometimes when everything gets pushed off from the object in question, yes, it just shines bright like sunlight. So basically, the beautiful colors around us are all but in our minds, illusions created by our own selves that make us feel how the world around us to view is such a delight. As a matter of fact, the beauty indeed is in the eye of the beholder, if you like. That's basically how we see colors in a nutshell, in the world. And so this phenomenon of thin film interference occurs whenever light contacts the surface of a film in question. In case of soap bubbles, it's the layer of the soap. In case of some butterflies, it's the structure of the butterfly itself. And in our case, it's the layer of oil that collects on water. So when light hits the top of this film that rests on the surface of water, some of the light passes through, but due to the reflective nature of the film, some of it reflects back. So far so good, but that's not all, because after passing through the thickness, or rather the thinness of this film, the light will be passing through the bottom surface of the film as well, where the film ends, after which it's just the ocean in our case. But some of this remaining light would again be reflected back. Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about. And we'll end up with two rays now. Since both would be refracted the same way when they come out, they'll be about parallel to each other. And light is made up of waves and stuff. And so these light rays would be so near to each other that the wave of this one would be communicating with the one of this one. But you see, it's possible that due to this little extra distance that this ray traveled, they won't be the exact mirror image of each other. But if both of the waveforms end up directly aligning with each other, in other words, be in phase, where the crests and troughs end up as a puzzle about to be put together and constructed, oh, by the way, which is called constructive interference, that's when there'll be colors. And of course, they could end up like this, not in phase or anywhere in between, causing, destructive interference, where the wavelengths would cancel each other out and no color would be seen. But if in phase, depending on the color that wavelength happens to be interfering constructively, it'd be showing off that particular color. And since the thickness of this oil sheen can't be expected to be uniform throughout the patch, of course, depending on the wavelength of the color that is being interactive, there would be different colors of whipcure at different parts of the oil spot. The color would change when the thickness starts to go up. The colors would seem to merge unless we just see like a white, until the spots where the distance is so much that we just see right through it, explaining why a soap bubble is not a ball of rainbow. There's difference in the thickness of the soap layer it's wrapped in. Yeah. So thank you. That's thin film interference for you, and the underlying mathematical framework that calculates and describes the effects of this behavior of light as it enters a thin film is the thin film principle that we mentioned earlier. If that all made any sense at all.
Inside, I'm just blue.
So yeah, that was some science and technology for you. So could this really be that what happened here is we saw these guys hanging around in the background of the SpongeBob world at a certain height, and we put a tag of clouds onto them because we have these cotton candies floating over us in our world, things that we call as clouds. Maybe we adapted those flower clouds to fit our dictionary, to have them give some meaning to us, ever without knowing if that's what they really even have been all this time. Like pareidolia that we discussed in the space iceberg. Maybe things not always happen for any reason at all, and maybe they just turn out to be a certain way so that we can fill in the gaps later with our reasoning rather. Maybe there one day will be found something as such underwater which would resemble these things more than our clouds. Maybe then the underwater fidget spinners won't need to be given funny names other than what they really are. Underwater fidget spinners. Like this anchor here or any other recognizable thing we see in the Bikini Bottom. And we'll then be able to say, hey, the SpongeBob team pre-discovered XYZ, whatever will that be. Will that lead to another hypothesis about Stephen Hillenburg? I don't know. I don't know nothing. I don't even know if this is making any sense at all to you anymore. Maybe there is a reason for it, maybe not. We are now heading to the point where the artist itself would have to feel reserved or reverse engineer everything he or she dreams at the drawing table, worrying, thinking twice, stressed out for being misjudged someday. But we sure know that this can't work like that, because what if they just did that to fill the environment, Jesus Christ? And what they designed just somehow looks similar to what the water at the Bikini Atoll turned out to be. I hear you say and agree. For the sake of content, not everything can be a conspiracy. Let's not ruin the memories. Set the underlying messages free. It'd be a far-fetched thought that Stephen Hillenburg or someone from the crew proposed a cartoonish variety of this aftermath of the nuclear weapon testing at the Atoll, so that the fans could overthink about it. Writers could post about it, theorists could report about it, and so-called creators could exaggerate about it. They had to do something about the empty spaces, you see, because of course a lot of water alone would have looked very dumb and boring and dumb. Maybe even would have given rise to some other theory altogether, like, oh, why the underwater world of Bikini Bottom is so empty. Where exactly are they? Are they actually in space? In one of those wide and widely empty, unattended areas out there? Do they even know how it is like down there? Make way for the beautiful nature. Why are there no plants around? Sunken stuff, maybe even flowers. Perhaps some in the air too. Fill it up, folks. Kinda like this, you know? Kinda, yeah, silly creators. Slackers lost the chance of being creative. What a missed opportunity at innovation of going off context and throwing in something out of the world as a backdrop or something. Should have taken the liberty to make, I don't know, bubble rocks or flower clouds or something, which could not only have backed up the absurdity of the series, but also at times be part of the story as well. You see what I'm saying? And if the makers of the show really had no reason for the flower clouds at all, and they were just thrown in without a worry, they perhaps needed to worry while putting them in. Because I'm sure little did they know one day every their action will be overthought and speculated so much. And had they known, they would have been like, hey Steve, don't you think doing this would make it look like that? Should we try to steer clear of these scary fan theories? Even if that ruins the show. There sure are situations of unsaid handshakes in cartoons with things that shout, hey, don't worry about this one, yo. And so with that, I can imagine Steve saying, it's fine team, go for it. That's best. Kids will take care of the rest. I mean, we know, sure, sometimes there really are hidden secrets that could be believed given enough evidence. Or Easter eggs in the video games planted, wished to not be found immediately, though in hope to be found eventually. Reward endings and unrevealed levels. At times even cursed things inadvertently published, with the media never planned to be put out and found. We are not talking about all that good stuff here, because we don't always want to catch the makers off guard, do we? We don't want to limit their thoughts and stop them from coming up with something remarkable, like they did do it once again. For the batch of kids currently experiencing the best times of their life. Oh no, all due to fear of being theorized all the time? Rather, they better get the liberty to offer their magic, where they don't have to think twice about the backlash, just wonder about the actions, without holding back the art, do their thing, and leave it to the fans to understand their plans. So, in other words, maybe this was just a coincidence. Raising the need of reason in an artistic world can very well cause the art to leak out of it. Art, for something that by nature is a lie, shouldn't necessarily always require a reason to flow in the direction it's flowing. We should just let it go wherever it's going. And not to mention, SpongeBob SquarePants is unlike a show, let's say Recess, one of my favorites. These kids are in the school. We know how schools are. There are like a zillion things that designers could choose to be in the background or use in the storyline. In case of a show that happens at the ocean floor though, where most of us have probably never been, each step can very well be in a new shoe. They might not be able to find many relatable articles and stuff, considering how most of the seaside of the earth is yet to be unraveled. Even at this stage of the humankind where we're on our way to send our names to one of Jupiter's icy moons, it's hard to imagine the number of species and things that are out there, or down there rather, on our own earth that we are waiting to be discovered. That being said though, if you are still on the other hand of the equation right now and somehow for some reason want this all to be false but these to be true, then I'll say yes. It could very well be factual as well if we look at it from the perspective of Steve. As Stephen started as a marine teacher and a part of his job was to teach kids about the marine life and water bodies and stuff. And knowledge has to cover all the aspects of the concept, you see, including the negative, the dark sides. They can't just all remain in the la la land forever. As a teacher, he would have to talk about all sides of it, even if the knowledge gets crazier than the stuff in the random land. And we have seen that a lot in the show. So since water pollution and marine ecosystem hygiene are all in fact parts of the studies that Steve delivered, it makes sense that Stephen might have tried to drop certain clues from his aquatic knowledge hither and thither on his way of creating things in the making of SpongeBob. Yes, very much possible that Stephen wanted there to be certain sinister angles concealed in the laughs and giggles of SpongeBob, certainly placed there for the ones to whom they may concern as an underlying message. It could all make sense. Steve did have that pinch of cool insanity in his work. In a way, the SpongeBob that we know today itself actually began as a way to guide children with taking care of the ocean. And other than helping kids understand the dangers, these things sure would have made their way into the series in fragments that we sometimes stumble upon and acknowledge or walk past indifferent to. But either way, it's just fun to swim around and inside the pools of such fanfiction and stuff every now and again, even if it is in vain. In fact, not just this theory about these clouds from Kaya Sakina, there are many other absolutely mind-blowing theories that amazing SpongeBob fans around the world constantly come up with, which although we didn't talk about here, but they also have to do with the catastrophic human interference in the water bodies of our planet in some way or the other. And I know now you're getting late, so... Oh, you want me to go over them as well? Well, then... swell. I guess we still have time, and it's like... Since discovering this oil theory, netizens have also highlighted the fact that the Bikini Bottom city kind of looks like a wasteland built on scrap metal and typical human pollution. Look, the houses are car mufflers. Kinda sorta giving merit to our discussion. A more related pollution theory that points towards the times when the effects of global warming on the environment have been indicated in the show itself. A more unrelated theory that deserves a mention is that the Barnacle Boy and Merman Man were the Navy divers who accidentally were caught in the Bikini Atoll tests. Oh, that's nuts. Heck, how about this video by Not Famous and these articles linking the flowers to boat propellers? Prehistoric Bikini Bottom, flowers weren't there, cause so were not the boats. Makes sense as well, yeah? This hand, this man, these things, what for? All this and more basically imply the massive intervention that humans and human activities have in the underwater lives of the Bikini Bottom citizens, and thereby the marine life of the earth in the real world.
Sometimes it's nice to hang up my hang glider and just watch the clouds roll by.
Yep, and just relax.
Yeah. Relax.
An intervention there is. Even though things at the surface may look fine to us, they may not always be that way. Which is what the show tries to show to us as allegories in ways beyond the puns and jokes. Seems as there's always been Stephen with his knowledge of marine science mixed with an encouraging subtext that's all about nature. Global warming, chemical manufacturing, water pollution, climate change, and of course, nuclear testing. Where it started. One may think it's been quite a while since Atoll met the criteria for US military to execute the tests. It was just about 2 months after the World War II, and so it all began at this remote ring of small coral islands when 167 people had to be moved for 23 nuclear devices to be detonated on this 2 square mile region, 20 of which were hydrogen bombs. Funnily enough, the first bomb dropped in Bikini Atoll was called Able because it was unable to hit its target ship and missed it. But it was no laughing matter because its radiation and blast killed 1/3 of the lab animals. Second one, Baker, created a 94-foot high wave tsunami, lifting up Arkansas, a 27,000-ton ship, coating many of the target ships with radiation in the surge of water, and sinking 8 of them. And although the third, Charlie, was called off, how can we not talk about the destruction caused due to the biggest of all 23 bombs? 1100 times the little boy, Bravo, the H-bomb, the first thermonuclear bomb with a weapon-friendly size and underestimated yield created by its fusion fuel, produced a bigger explosion than what was planned. To be more accurate, thrice the expected amount. Upon execution on 1st of March 1954, this 23,500 pounds device produced a 25 megaton blast, vaporizing 3 of the islands in the atoll, tearing a mile-wide crater in the bottom of the lagoon, spewing radioactive debris that was, as estimated, equivalent to 216 Empire State Buildings, contaminating a number of residents at Rongelap and Utrecht atolls, and an 80 miles away Japanese boat, Lucky Dragon 5, with 23 crew members, one of which, 40-year-old Kobayama Aikichi, died 6 months later and had an autopsy in which the Japanese physicians cited the radiation sickness as the cause of the death. He is considered the first victim of the hydrogen bomb. And the place which initially only few of the Americans knew existed certainly became one of the most infamous spots on the planet. So well known, in fact, that if you ever thought that the islands were named after a swimsuit woman wore, the swimsuit was named after it. It feels fair to say that the coral reefs now seem to be flourishing. That was the past, which is gone. But although it may look like that the 60 years of time lapse has turned our Bikini Atoll back into the Pacific paradise it used to be once, as mentioned by the Stanford biology professor Stephen Palumbi post visiting the remote atoll for a 10-day research trip for the PBS documentary Big Pacific, there's more than what meets the eye. Atoll is still littered with parts of exploded planes and ships. Only half a dozen custodians are there now, with food and water imported, tending a small ghost village. The aftermath and the radiations must have been foreseen by the authorities, which is why the area was evacuated well before the bombs were detonated. And it's noteworthy that back in 1970s, after more than a decade or so, although the US Atomic Energy Commission declared Bikini Atoll good to go and allowed its former citizens to move back there and lead a normal life, they quickly realized that it was not the case. And the location actually remained radiated, is still radiated, and by the way, will remain radiated, making it safe for humans not until ever, probably. And so they had to be sent back again. And I'm sure this time they were quicker to agree because the area is no more a place for humans. In fact, right now the only people who are actually there are about 4 to 5 caretakers, which includes Edward Madison, by the way, who has been at the island since 1985. In fact, he is the grandson of one of the original 167 residents of the Bikini Atoll, who were moved before the tests were carried out. Makes me wonder how it must have been for the grandfather when the residents were told that it's going to be a quick return. Yeah, quick. Such huge impact on nature for such long duration of time, needless to say, is not only undesirable for the atmosphere, but the area, the islands, the water bodies must be hugely affected as well. I mean, the groundwater is defiled by what's considered the most violent thing ever done to the ocean. The air is unbreathable. Goddamn, even the coconuts are radioactive. And about these things, as a final verdict, well, if you're here still, I'd say, if you will, be amazed by the theories that thrill and stories sublime, without overthinking them longer than the show's runtime.
Ooh, you know what that cloud looks like?
What?
A flower.
They all look like flowers, SpongeBob. All the time.
They sure do.